When I looked into Ethan's eyes for the first time, I saw an abyss of pain and despair that seemed to pull me inward. He was lying in the bed, staring at the ceiling, as if searching for answers in a place where there was nothing but the whiteness of that surface. Jessica, his best friend, sat beside him with a look of concern that showed how much she cared about him. The hospital environment, with its characteristic smell of disinfectant and cold lights, felt even more oppressive given the scene unfolding before me. I was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a young doctor who believed every life was a battle to be won. But there, facing Ethan, I felt powerless. "He doesn't want help," Jessica said, her voice breaking as tears filled her eyes. "He doesn't want to live." "Sarah?" Her words cut through the air like a knife, and I knew I had to find a way to reach Ethan, to make him understand that life still had something to offer, even amid the darkness. "Ethan," I began, moving closer to the bed. "I'm here to help. I want you to know you're not alone." He turned his face away, as if my words were just echoes in a void he refused to fill. I could feel his resistance, like an invisible barrier preventing me from entering his world. "It won't work," Dr. Ethan replied, his voice low and tired. "I don't want to be saved." His words hit me hard, and I remembered so many times I had faced patients fighting physical illnesses, but I had never encountered such an internal battle. How could I convince him that life was worth living when he had decided he preferred death? Jessica looked at me, searching for an answer I didn't have. "He's tired, Sarah. Tired of fighting." I could see the pain in her eyes, and it made me reflect on what it really means to care for someone. It wasn't just about treating wounds or diseases. It was also about understanding the other person's soul, their deepest pains, and the reasons leading them to want to give up. "Ethan, tell me what you're feeling," I asked, trying to connect with him in a more human way. "What brought you here?" He hesitated, and for a moment I thought he might open up. But then he turned his face away again, and the wall he had built around himself became more solid. Frustration began to grow inside me, but I knew I needed to be patient. "I just want it all to end," he murmured, his voice almost inaudible. "Nothing makes sense. I can't see a future." Those words resonated within me, like an echo of a truth many carry but few have the courage to share. I knew that if I wanted to help him, I needed to go beyond medical treatment. I needed to understand what made him feel so lost. "You still have friends, Ethan. Jessica is here for you. And so am I." I tried to insist, but he just closed his eyes, as if wanting to disconnect from the world. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica, sensing the tension, began talking about the good times they had together, the memories that made him smile. She talked about the day they went to the beach, how Ethan laughed, watching a dog chase a ball, and how he always had a special way of making people around him laugh. But he seemed distant, as if these memories were just shadows of a past he could no longer reach. And here's something nobody tells you about working in a hospital. You don't choose to harden yourself. Either you build walls around your heart, or your heart stops beating. But I didn't want to be that kind of doctor. Not with Ethan. Time passed, and I returned to the room several times, trying different approaches. During one of these visits, I decided to take him to a place I knew could touch his heart. The hospital's garden area, a small green space that always brought a bit of hope to patients. "Let's take a walk, Ethan. The sun is beautiful out there," I suggested. He hesitated, but to my surprise, he agreed. Jessica smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It was a small step, but I knew it was something. In Day Garden, the sunlight warmed our faces, and the flowers were beginning to bloom. I noticed that, for a brief moment, Ethan seemed to relax. "Look at how everything is alive here," I said, pointing to the colorful flowers. "Life goes on, even when everything seems dark." He looked around, and for an instant, I saw a spark of interest in his eyes. "Do you think I can feel that again?" he asked, the vulnerability in his voice touching me deeply. "Yes, I believe you can," I replied, feeling a wave of emotion. "But you need to want it, Ethan. Life is full of ups and downs, and it's normal to feel lost sometimes. What matters is that you don't have to face this alone." Jessica held his hand, and I realized I was beginning to see a light at the end of the tunnel. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, I could help him find a way back. From that day on, the dynamic began to change. Ethan started participating in therapy sessions, and I saw him opening up more. Sometimes he still had bad days, but there was a small glimmer of hope beginning to emerge. We talked about his dreams, his aspirations, and I saw him start to remember what it meant to live. Jessica was always by his side, an anchor amid the storm. One morning, while we were walking through the garden, Ethan suddenly stopped. "Do you really think I can be happy again, Sarah?" His question caught me off guard, and I realized this was a crucial moment. I knew the answer needed to be honest, but also full of hope. "Yes, Ethan, I believe you can. Happiness isn't a destination, but a journey. You need to take small steps and allow yourself to feel everything. Eben to pay. But most importantly, you need to want it." He looked at me with a mix of doubt and curiosity, as if allowing himself to dream a little. That conversation became a turning point. Ethan began participating in therapeutic activities and even enrolled in a support group. I saw him opening up to other people, sharing his story and listening to others' stories. It was as if, by sharing his pain, he was freeing himself from a weight he had carried for so long. Jessica was always there, encouraging him, holding his hand during the most difficult sessions. Her love was palpable and became a force that pushed Ethan forward. One afternoon, after an intense session, I decided to visit Ethan and Jessica. When I entered the room, I found Ethan with a smile on his face, something I hadn't seen in a long time. "Doctor, you won't believe what happened." He seemed so animated, so full of life. Today, in the group, I shared about that day at the beach when I almost drowned trying to catch the surfboard. Everyone laughed and related to the story. It was incredible. He was so excited that I couldn't help but smile. "That's wonderful, Ethan. Seeing you connecting with others is a sign that you're beginning to open up." Jessica looked at me with tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. I knew he had this inside him. Sarah, he just needed a little push. I realized that despite all the challenges, there was a growing light inside Ethan. He was beginning to believe he could have a future, and that filled me with hope. The weeks passed, and although there were difficult days, Ethan showed himself to be more resilient. He began making plans, small plans, but plans nonetheless. "Sarah, I want to learn to play guitar," he told me one day. "I've always dreamed of playing a song for Jessica." His desire to do something for another person moved me deeply. "That's beautiful, Ethan. Music can be a powerful way to express your feelings." He smiled, and I saw that behind the pain, there was a will to live beginning to blossom. But as in every journey, challenges were still ahead. One day, during a visit, I noticed Ethan was quieter than usual. He didn't look me in the eyes when I entered the room. "What's happening, Ethan?" I asked, trying to understand what was going on with him. He hesitated before answering. "I'm scared, Sarah. What if primera faillo? What if all this isn't enough?" His words echoed in my heart, and I knew this was a delicate moment. "It's normal to be afraid, Ethan. We all are. The important thing is not to let fear dictate your actions. You've already taken incredible steps so far. Look at everything you've accomplished." Jessica, who was beside him, held his hand tightly. "I'm here. You're not alone. We'll face this together." I realized their connection was a vital force, something that could sustain him in moments of doubt. Life is full of uncertainties, but it's also full of possibilities. You don't need to have all the answers now. What matters is that you keep walking, I said, trying to encourage him. He took a deep breath, and for a moment, I saw a small spark of hope return to his eyes. Over the days, Ethan began opening up more about his fears and insecurities. He talked about the pressure he felt to be perfect, to meet others' expectations, and even his own. "I feel that if I fail, I'll disappoint everyone around me," he confessed. That confession made me realize his struggle wasn't just against pain, but also against the need to feel accepted and loved. "Ethan, you don't need to be perfect. Nobody is. What really matters is being true to yourself and allowing yourself to feel. And you're already doing that. You're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And that's strength, not weakness." He looked at me with a mix of gratitude and doubt, but I knew he was beginning to understand that life is made of ups and downs, and that it's normal to feel lost sometimes. The days turned into weeks, and Ethan's journey became a symbol of struggle and overcoming. He began playing guitar, and on a beautiful sunny day, he organized a small performance for Jessica and some friends. When he started playing, I saw the transformation that had occurred. He was no longer the man who felt lost. Now he was someone searching for his own voice. Jessica was in the front row, tears of joy streaming down her face, and I couldn't help but be moved by that scene. "This song is for you, Jessica. Thank you for never giving up on me," he said, and his words resonated with all of us. At that moment, I realized that true healing goes beyond physical treatment. It's about reconnecting with what really matters: love, friendship, and hope. You know, if this story is touching your heart, I need to tell you something. You're not just watching a video. You're part of something bigger. Every person who's here right now is carrying their own story, their own battles, their own moments of doubt and hope. And that's exactly why I do this. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to know they're not alone. If you feel that connection, if you feel that these stories matter, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Not because I'm asking you to, but because you deserve to have this space. A place where real stories are told with truth and heart. And please, leave a comment. Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me if you've ever been the Ethan in someone's life, or if you've been the Jessica, or even the Sarah. This space is ours. It's safe, and every word you share here matters more than you know. "You're incredible, Ethan," I shouted, barely able to contain my emotion. He gave me a smile that lit up the room, and I realized that in that instant, he was no longer lost. He had found a purpose, a reason to move forward. "Thank you, Sarah. All of this is thanks to you and Jessica. Without you both, I'd be in a very different place now," he replied, a gleam of gratitude in his eyes. That night was magical. But I knew Ethan's journey wasn't ending there. He still had to face his fears and insecurities, and life outside the hospital was still a challenge. However, the transformation he had experienced was a sign that he was ready to fight for his happiness. But life, as always, had its twists. The next day, when I arrived at the hospital, I received news that left me in shock. Jessica had received an unexpected call from her family, and she would need to be away for a while. My heart tightened, thinking about how this would affect Ethan. He had become so dependent on her support, and I feared her absence could be a setback in his journey. "You don't need to worry, Sarah. I'll be fine," he said as soon as he heard about Jessica's departure. But I saw the uncertainty in his eyes, and I knew he was just trying to be strong. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan. Let's talk about how we can handle this." In the days that followed, Ethan and I became even closer. He began sharing more about his struggles, and I listened attentively. We went to the garden together, where he would sit in silence, writing in his journal. I realized that writing was a form of therapy, and I encouraged him to continue exploring his emotions through it. One afternoon, while we were talking, Ethan surprised me. "You know, Sarah, despite all the difficulties, I feel like I'm beginning to understand what really matters in life. It's not about what we've lost, but about what we can still create." "Et looked at me," and I saw a gleam of determination in his eyes. At that moment, I realized Ethan was transforming into something magnificent. He was creating a new chapter in his life, and I had the honor of witnessing it. Over time, Jessica's absence became an opportunity for Ethan to strengthen himself even more. He began attending support groups, where he met other people facing similar battles. With each meeting, he became more confident, more sure of himself. And the first, in turn, felt inspired by his courage. One morning, while we were walking through the garden, Ethan stopped and looked at the flowers beginning to bloom. "Sarah, I want to do something special for Jessica. I want her to know how much she means to me," he said, his eyes shining. "I thought about making a surprise dinner. What do you think?" "That's a wonderful idea. I'm sure she'll love it." "Let's plan this together," I replied, excited about the idea. That was a clear sign that Ethan was reconnecting with what really mattered in his life. In the following days, Ethan and I worked together to organize the dinner. He was so excited, and I could see how the idea of doing something special for Jessica motivated him to step out of his comfort zone. On the day of the dinner, the atmosphere was full of anticipation. Jessica entered the room, and I led her to the table we had prepared. The candles were lit, and the smell of the food Ethan had cooked filled the air. "Surprise!" Ethan exclaimed, and the smile on Jessica's face warmed my heart. "I wanted to do something special for you, because you've always been by my side, even in the most difficult moments." Tears streamed down Jessica's face, and I knew that was a moment they would never forget. The connection between them was palpable, and I realized the love they shared was a powerful force capable of overcoming any adversity. While they talked and laughed, I felt grateful to be part of that story, to witness Ethan's transformation and the strength of the love surrounding him. At that instant, I realized the room where everything began, which was once a space of pain and suffering, had become a true home for all of us. There, we learned that life is made of ups and downs, but that with love, hope, and support, we can find light even in the darkest moments. Ethan began opening up about his feelings and seeking ways to deal with the anxiety that haunted him. He started writing in a journal and practicing meditation, activities that helped calm his mind. I was so proud of him. The transformation he had experienced was remarkable, and with each passing day, he became stronger. Ethan's journey was far from over, but together, we were ready to face whatever came our way. And so, that space became a true symbol of hope and transformation. The love that flourished there among us was a powerful force, and I knew that together we could face any storm. Life is made of ups and downs, but with love and support, we can find light even in the darkest moments. The atmosphere had become lighter, but I knew there were still challenges ahead. One day, during a visit, I noticed Ethan was more withdrawn than usual. He didn't look me in the eyes when I entered the room. "What's happening, Ethan?" I asked, trying to understand what was going on. He hesitated before answering. "I'm scared, Sarah. What if I fall again? What if I can't get up this time?" The doubt in his voice was palpable, and I knew this was a critical moment. "Listen, Ethan, we all have fear of failing, but it's in that fear that we find the strength to continue. The important thing is to get up with each fall. You've gotten up so many times already. Look at how many people you've inspired, including me," I said, trying to bring a little light to the darkness surrounding him. He took a deep breath, and I saw a small flame of hope reignite in his eyes. "Do you really think I can overcome this?" he asked, almost as if seeking confirmation. "I know you can, and you don't have to do it alone. We'll work on this together, and I'll be here every step of the way," I replied, feeling those words were more for me than for him. Ethan slowly nodded, and I realized he was beginning to accept the reality of his struggle. Over the days, the atmosphere began to transform again. Ethan started opening up about his feelings and seeking ways to deal with the anxiety that haunted him. He began writing in a journal, and I encouraged him to express his emotions through art. The simple act of putting his thoughts on paper seemed to help him find clarity. On a quiet afternoon, while we were walking through the garden, Ethan stopped in front of a flowering bush and looked at me with shining eyes. "Sarah, I want to do something special for Jessica. I want her to know how much she means to me," he said, determination beginning to shine in his eyes. "I thought about making a surprise dinner. What do you think?" My heart filled with joy at the idea. "That's a wonderful idea. I'm sure she'll love it. Let's plan this together," I replied, excited about the prospect of seeing him reconnect with what really mattered in his life. In the following days, Ethan and I worked together to organize the dinner. He was so excited, and I could see how the idea of doing something special for Jessica motivated him to step out of his comfort zone. On the day of the dinner, the atmosphere was full of anticipation. Jessica entered the room, and I led her to the table we had prepared. The candles were lit, and the smell of the food Ethan had cooked filled the air. "Surprise!" he exclaimed, and the smile on Jessica's face warmed my heart. "I wanted to do something special for you, because you've always been by my side, even in the most difficult moments." Tears streamed down Jessica's face, and I knew that was a moment they would never forget. The connection between them was palpable, and I realized the love they shared was a powerful force capable of overcoming any adversity. While they talked and laughed, I felt grateful to be part of that story, to witness Ethan's transformation and the strength of the love surrounding him. At that instant, I realized the space where everything began, which was once filled with pain and suffering, had become a true home for all of us. There, we learned that life is made of ups and downs, but that with love, hope, and support, we can find light even in the darkest moments. Ethan's journey was far from over, but together, we were ready to face whatever came our way. But the atmosphere was lighter now, even though I knew shadows were still present. Ethan's transformation was inspiring, but the internal battle he faced hadn't disappeared. One sunny morning, while I was reviewing some charts, I received a message from Jessica that made me uneasy. "Sarah, we need to talk." "It's about Ethan." My heart raced. I ran to the room, feeling a knot in my throat. Upon entering, I found Ethan sitting on the bed, head down and hands trembling. Jessica was beside him, with a worried expression I knew well. "What's happening?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "I'm not okay, Sarah," Ethan replied, his voice almost a whisper. That empty feeling came back, and I don't know how to deal with it. The desperation in his eyes cut me like a knife. "I thought I was getting better, but it seems like I'm falling again." Jessica held his hand, and I realized her strength was essential at that moment. "Ethan, this is part of the process. You're facing your emotions, and that can be painful," I said, trying to comfort him. "But you're not alone. We're here to support you." He looked at me in doubt, still hung in his eyes. "But what if I can't get up this time? What if I disappoint you again?" His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Look, you're not a disappointment, and you don't need to be perfect. Nobody is. What matters is that you're fighting, and that's already a great victory." The tension in the air was palpable, and I knew this was a critical moment. "Remember all the times you've gotten up. Each fall is an opportunity to learn and grow," I continued, trying to bring a little light to the darkness surrounding him. Jessica squeezed his hand tighter, and I realized she was as present as I was. "Ethan, you've already shown me what courage is. Don't give up now," she said, her voice breaking. That connection between them was powerful, and I knew that together they could face any storm. He took a deep breath, and a small glimmer of hope began to light up in his eyes. "Do you really think I can overcome this?" he asked, almost as if seeking confirmation. "I know you can, and you don't need to do it alone. We'll work on this together, and I'll be here every step of the way," I replied, feeling those words were as much for me as for him. Ethan slowly nodded, and I realized he was beginning to accept the reality of his struggle. Over the days, the atmosphere began to transform again. Ethan started opening up about his feelings and seeking ways to deal with the anxiety that haunted him. He began writing in a journal, and I encouraged him to express his emotions through art. The simple act of putting his thoughts on paper seemed to help him find clarity. On a quiet afternoon, while we were walking through the garden, Ethan stopped in front of a flowering bush and looked at me with shining eyes. "Sarah, I want to do something special for Jessica. I want her to know how much she means to me," he said, determination beginning to shine in his eyes. "I thought about making a surprise dinner. What do you think?" My heart filled with joy at the idea. "That's a wonderful idea. I'm sure she'll love it. Let's plan this together," I replied, excited about the prospect of seeing him reconnect with what really mattered in his life. In the following days, Ethan and I worked together to organize the dinner. He was so excited, and I could see how the idea of doing something special for Jessica motivated him to step out of his comfort zone. On the day of the dinner, the atmosphere was full of anticipation. Jessica entered the room, and I led her to the table we had prepared. The candles were lit, and the smell of the food Ethan had cooked filled the air. "Surprise!" he exclaimed, and the smile on Jessica's face warmed my heart. "I wanted to do something special for you, because you've always been by my side, even in the most difficult moments." Tears streamed down Jessica's face, and I knew that was a moment they would never forget. The connection between them was palpable, and I realized the love they shared was a powerful force capable of overcoming any adversity. While they talked and laughed, I felt grateful to be part of that story, to witness Ethan's transformation and the strength of the love surrounding him. At that instant, I realized the space where everything began, which was once filled with pain and suffering, had become a true home for all of us. There, we learned that life is made of ups and downs, but that with love, hope, and support, we can find light even in the darkest moments. Ethan's journey was far from over, but together, we were ready to face whatever came our way. However, something inside me knew the real test was still to come. The challenge of the next day awaited me, and I needed to be ready for it. Life, with its twists and turns, was about to teach us one more lesson. I had prepared for a normal day, but when I woke up, I realized the atmosphere had changed. The sun came through the window, illuminating the space in a way I hadn't seen in a while. Jessica was beside Ethan, and they were talking, laughing about something I couldn't quite hear. That scene brought a smile to my face, a reminder of how much hope can flourish even in the most adverse circumstances. "Good morning. You too," I said as I entered the room. It looks like the day started with good energy. Ethan looked at me with a gleam in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. "Good morning, Sarah. We were just talking about what we're going to do today." Jessica had an incredible idea. I approached, curious. "Oh, really? What are you planning?" "We're going to take a little walk through the hospital garden. I feel like we need some fresh air and to see life out there," Jessica explained, holding Ethan's hand affectionately. "And you're coming with us?" "Of course." The idea seemed perfect. The garden was a space that always provided a moment of peace and reflection, and I knew the connection with nature could work wonders for Ethan. Of course, let's enjoy the day. As we walked, I found myself thinking about how much that space had transformed. Before, it was a place of pain and sadness, but now it was a space where love and hope flourished. Ethan, who once felt lost, was now beginning to find his way. He was opening up and allowing himself to feel, and that was something extraordinary. In their garden, the flowers were in full bloom, and the beauty around us was almost palpable. Jessica and Ethan moved away a bit, talking about the colors of the flowers and how each one had its own story. I sat on a nearby bench, watching them with a smile on my face. The joy emanating from them was contagious, and I felt grateful to be part of that journey. "Sarah!" Jessica called, making me look at them. "Come here. You need to see this." I got up quickly and went to where they were. Ethan was crouched in front of a vibrantly colored flower. "Look at this flower, Sarah. Did you know each one has a different meaning? This one represents hope." I smiled, admiring his curiosity. "Yes, each flower has its own story, and you, Ethan, are beginning to write yours with every step you take." He smiled back, and at that moment, I realized how his journey was intertwining with mine. I was also learning, growing, and allowing myself to feel. The love I saw between Ethan and Jessica was a powerful force, a light that illuminated even the darkest corners of their souls. We returned to the room, and the atmosphere was lighter. Jessica prepared a simple snack, but full of care. While we ate, we talked about dreams and hopes. Ethan, with a renewed gleam in his eyes, began sharing his plans for the future. He talked about going back to school, about how he wanted to help other people facing battles similar to his. Every word that came out of his mouth was like a seed of hope being planted. "I want to be an example for others, just like you were for me, Sarah," he said, looking directly into my eyes. "If I can overcome this, I want to help others do the same." Those words echoed in my heart, and I knew he was speaking the truth. Ethan had a light inside him that could illuminate many people's paths. "You're already an example, Ethan, and I'll be here to support you every step of this journey." At that moment, the room wasn't just a physical space. It was a refuge of healing, a place where life and death intertwined in a cycle of learning and love. I realized that although Ethan was fighting his inner demons, he was no longer alone. He had Jessica by his side, and, in a way, I was also part of that support network. You know what? I need to pause here for a moment and talk to you. Really talk. If you're still watching this, if you've made it this far in Ethan's story, it means something. It means you understand that these aren't just stories. They're pieces of real life, of struggles we all face in one way or another. And I want you to know that your presence here, right now, means the world to me. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'm not going to beg you to. I'm going to ask you to think about this. Do you want more stories like this? Do you want this space to continue existing? If yes, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell, because every notification you get is another reminder that you're not alone in this journey. And please, please, leave a comment. Tell me your story. Have you ever been in Ethan's shoes? Have you been the Jessica for someone? Or maybe you're going through this right now. Share Italiano. This community we're building together is real, and your voice matters. What would you like to see next? What story needs to be told? I'm listening, we're all listening, but life, as always, had its twists. The next day, when I arrived at the hospital, I received news that left me in shock. Jessica had received an unexpected call from her family, and she would need to be away for a while. My heart tightened, thinking about how this would affect Ethan. He had become so dependent on her support, and I feared her absence could be a setback in his journey. "You don't need to worry, Sarah. I'll be fine," he said as soon as he heard about Jessica's departure. But I saw the uncertainty in his eyes, and I knew he was just trying to be strong. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan. Let's talk about how we can handle this." In the days that followed, Ethan and I became even closer. He began sharing more about his struggles, and I listened attentively. We went to the garden together, where he would sit in silence, writing in his journal. I realized that writing was a form of therapy, and I encouraged him to continue exploring his emotions through it. One afternoon, while we were talking, Ethan surprised me. "You know, Sarah, despite all the difficulties, I feel like I'm beginning to understand what really matters in life. It's not about what we've lost, but about what we can still create." Ilu datme, and I saw a gleam of determination in his eyes. At that moment, I realized Ethan was transforming into something magnificent. He was creating a new chapter in his life, and I had the honor of witnessing it. Over time, Jessica's absence became an opportunity for Ethan to strengthen himself even more. He began attending support groups where he met other people facing similar battles. With each meeting, he became more confident, more sure of himself, and the first, in turn, felt inspired by his courage. The life in that hospital room had transformed into a journey of learning and growth. I knew challenges would still come, but I also knew we were ready to face them together. Each day, Ethan was becoming stronger, and I was there, by his side, ready to support him in every step of this journey. And so, that space became a true symbol of hope and transformation. The love that flourished there among us was a powerful force, and I knew that together we could face any storm. Life is made of ups and downs, but with love and support, we can find light even in the darkest moments. One morning, while we were walking through the garden, Ethan stopped and looked at the flowers beginning to bloom. "Sarah, I want to do something special for Jessica. I want her to know how much she means to me," he said, his eyes shining. "I thought about making a surprise dinner. What do you think?" "That's a wonderful idea. I'm sure she'll love it. Let's plan this together," I replied, excited about the idea. That was a clear sign that Ethan was reconnecting with what really mattered in his life. In the following days, Ethan and I worked together to organize the dinner. He was so excited, and I could see how the idea of doing something special for Jessica motivated him to step out of his comfort zone. On the day of the dinner, the atmosphere was full of anticipation. Jessica entered the room, and I led her to the table we had prepared. The candles were lit, and the smell of the food Ethan had cooked filled the air. "Surprise!" he exclaimed, and the smile on Jessica's face warmed my heart. "I wanted to do something special for you because you've always been by my side, even in the most difficult moments." Tears streamed down Jessica's face, and I knew that was a moment they would never forget. The connection between them was palpable, and I realized the love they shared was a powerful force, capable of overcoming any adversity. While they talked and laughed, I felt grateful to be part of that story, to witness Ethan's transformation and the strength of the love surrounding him. At that instant, I realized the space where everything began, which was once filled with pain and suffering, had become a true home for all of us. There, we learned that life is made of ups and downs, but that with love, hope, and support, we can find light even in the darkest moments. Ethan's journey was far from over, but together, we were ready to face whatever came our way. Ethan began opening up about his feelings and seeking ways to deal with the anxiety that haunted him. He started writing in a journal and practicing meditation, activities that helped calm his mind. I was so proud of him. The transformation he had experienced was remarkable, and with each passing day, he became stronger. The days transformed into weeks, and the atmosphere continued to evolve. Ethan was no longer the man who refused help. He was someone actively seeking his own healing. He participated in group therapy sessions, where he shared his experiences and listened to others. The bond he formed with other patients was beautiful to witness. They supported each other, shared tears and laughter, and together they built a community of hope. I often watched from the doorway, my heart full of gratitude for being able to witness such transformation. Jessica returned after 2 weeks, and the reunion was emotional. When she walked into the room, Ethan's face lit up in a way I had never seen before. "Jessica," he exclaimed, getting up from the bed with more energy than I had seen in weeks. "I missed you so much." They embraced tightly, and I could see tears streaming down both their faces. I stepped back, giving them their private moment, but I couldn't help feeling deeply moved by the scene before me. That love between them was pure, unconditional, and it was exactly what Ethan needed to continue his journey toward healing. "How are you?" Jessica asked, pulling back slightly to look at his face, searching his eyes. "You look different." "Better? I am better," Ethan replied, his voice firm and steady in a way it hadn't been before. "I've been working on myself, going to therapy, talking to people who understand what I'm going through, and Sarah has been incredible. She never gave up on me, even when I had completely given up on myself." Jessica looked at me with gratitude shining in her eyes, tears still fresh on her cheeks. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for being here when I couldn't be. Thank you for not letting him face this alone." I smiled, feeling warmth spread through my chest. "He did the work, Jessica." I just walked beside him and refused to leave, but seeing both of you together again, that's what really matters. This is what gives him true strength. The following weeks were a beautiful testament to Ethan's growing resilience. He continued attending his support group sessions, and I watched with pride as he gradually transformed from someone seeking help to someone offering it. One afternoon, a new patient arrived at the group, a young man named David who had also recently attempted to take his own life. He sat in the circle, silent and completely withdrawn, his eyes fixed on the floor, much like Ethan had been in those early days. I watched from my position by the door as Ethan approached him after the session ended. "Hey, I'm Ethan," he said gently, crouching down to David's eye level. "I know how you're feeling right now. I've been exactly where you are. The darkness, the emptiness, the feeling that nothing will ever get better. I've felt all of it." David looked up slowly, surprised that someone was reaching out to him with such understanding. "You have?" he asked quietly, his voice barely audible. "Yeah?" Ethan nodded, sitting down in the chair beside him. "And I'm not going to tell you it gets easier overnight, because that would be a lie. It doesn't. Some days are still really hard. But I will tell you this, and I need you to hear me. It does get better. If you let people in, if you allow yourself to feel and to heal, if you take it one day at a time, it absolutely does get better. I promise you that." I watched from across the room, my heart swelling with emotion and pride. Ethan had come so incredibly far from that man who lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wanting nothing more than for everything to end. Now here he was, offering genuine hope and real understanding to someone else who was drowning in the same darkness he had fought through. That evening, as the sun set and painted the hospital garden in shades of gold and amber, I found Ethan sitting by the window in his room, his guitar resting in his lap. He was strumming softly, working on a melody I didn't recognize. The notes were hauntingly beautiful, filled with both melancholy and something that sounded like hope. "That's beautiful. Primera Said," softly, not wanting to startle him as I approached. "Did you write it?" He nodded, a small but genuine smile appearing on his face. "It's for everyone who's ever felt like giving up. I wanted to create something that reminds people there's still beauty in the world, even when it's hard to see. Even when everything feels dark and hopeless, there are still moments of light if we're willing to look for them." I sat down in the chair beside him, giving him my full attention as he continued to play. The music was achingly beautiful, each note seeming to carry the weight of his journey, the pain he had endured, and the hope he had found. When he finished, I found myself wiping away tears that had gathered in my eyes. Ethan, that was absolutely incredible. You have a real gift, and I think sharing it with others could help so many people who are struggling. Music has this way of reaching into places that words sometimes can't touch. He looked at me, and I could see vulnerability mixed with hope in his eyes. Do you really think so? Do you think it could actually help people? I nodded emphatically, placing my hand on his shoulder. I know so. Music has a way of reaching people's hearts in ways that medicine and therapy sometimes can't. This could be such an important part of your healing journey, and it could help light the way for others on theirs too. You're not just healing yourself anymore, Ethan. You're becoming someone who can help heal others. The day finally came when Ethan was ready to be discharged from the hospital. It had been 3 long months since that first day when I walked into his room and saw a man who had completely given up on life, who saw no future, no hope, no reason to continue. Now, standing before me, preparing to leave, was someone completely transformed. Someone who had fought through the deepest darkness imaginable and found his way back to the light. Someone who had chosen life when death had seemed like the only option. As we prepared for his departure, I felt a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me. I was immensely proud of how far he had come, of the work he had done, of the person he had become, but I was also genuinely sad to see him go. He had become so much more than just a patient to me. He had taught me profound lessons about resilience, about the power of hope, about the importance of human connection, and about never giving up on someone even when they've given up on themselves. Sarah, Ethan said as he carefully packed his few belongings into a small bag, pausing to look at me directly. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. You literally saved my life when I didn't want it saved. I shook my head gently, feeling tears beginning to prick at my eyes. No, Ethan, you saved your own life. I just walked beside you and refused to let you walk that path alone. There's an important difference. You did the hard work. You made the choice to keep fighting, even when every part of you wanted to give up. That was all you. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me in a tight hug, and I hugged him back, feeling the full weight of our shared journey. All the conversations, all the tears, all the small victories, and the setbacks we had navigated together. Promise me something, I said as we pulled apart, looking him directly in the eyes. Promise me that if you ever feel yourself slipping back into that dark place, even a little bit, you'll reach out. To me, to Jessica, to your support group, to the crisis line, to anyone. You don't have to fight alone anymore. You never have to fight alone again. I promise, he said firmly, and I could hear the conviction in his voice. I know now that asking for help isn't weakness like I used to think. It's actually the bravest, strongest thing you can do. It takes real courage to admit you're struggling and to let people in. Jessica arrived to take him home, and the 3 of us stood together one last time in that hospital room that had witnessed so much pain and so much growth. This room, I said quietly, looking around at the walls that had contained so many difficult conversations, so many tears, so many breakthroughs. It will never be the same. So much happened here. So much transformation took place within these walls. Ethan nodded, his eyes following my gaze around the space. I came here wanting to die, and instead I learned how to truly live. Not just exist and go through the motions, but actually embrace life with all its pain and beauty, all its ups and downs. That's the greatest gift you both gave me, the gift of wanting to live again. As they prepared to leave, Ethan turned back one more time, hesitating at the doorway. That new patient? David, he said, concern evident in his voice, the one from group therapy. Will ya keep an eye on him? Tell him I'll come back to visit. That I'll talk to him anytime if he needs someone who understands what he's going through. I will, I promised, touched by his concern for someone else who was suffering, and I know he'll appreciate that more than you can imagine. Sometimes all we need is someone who's been through the darkness to show us that survival is possible, that recovery is real, that there is light on the other side. After they left, I stood alone in the now empty room, the silence feeling heavy and meaningful. I reflected deeply on everything that had transpired within these walls over the past 3 months. The medical charts and equipment told one story, a clinical tale of treatment protocols and recovery metrics. But the real story was so much deeper, so much more profound. It was about a human soul finding its way back from the edge of the abyss, about the transformative power of persistence and love, about refusing to give up on someone even when they had completely given up on themselves. I thought about all the Ethans out there in the world, all the people struggling in silence, feeling like there's no way out, like the darkness will never end. And I thought about all the Jessicas and Sarahs, all the people who stand beside them with unwavering support, who refuse to let them face their darkness alone. 6 months passed, and one day I received an unexpected invitation in the mail. It was for a small concert at a local community center. Ethan was performing, and he had specifically requested my presence. When I arrived that evening, the room was filled with people, many of whom I recognized from the hospital support groups. There was an energy in the air, a sense of community and shared experience. Etho took the stage with his guitar, his hands steady, his posture confident. Jessica stood in the front row, absolutely beaming with pride, her eyes never leaving him. "Good evening, everyone," Ethan began, his voice clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the room. 6 months ago, I was in the darkest place I've ever been. I had lost all hope for the future, and I truly, deeply believed the world would be better off without me in it. But I was wrong. So incredibly wrong. And I'm standing here tonight because people refused to give up on me when I had completely given up on myself. He began to play, and the entire room fell into a respectful silence, every ear tuned to the music and his words. The song was the one he had written in the hospital, but he had added lyrics since then, beautiful and heartbreaking words that spoke of darkness and light, of falling and rising, of the beauty that exists even in our most broken moments, of choosing life over death, of finding reasons to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless. As Primera listened, tears streamed freely down my face, and I didn't bother to wipe them away. This was why I became a doctor. Not for moments like this specifically, but for the profound reminder that every single life matters, that every person has inherent worth and value, and that sometimes the greatest medical intervention we can offer isn't a medication or a procedure, but simply being present and refusing to walk away when someone needs us most. After the performance ended and the applause died down, Ethan found me in the crowd. His face was flushed with emotion and accomplishment. "Thank you for coming," he said, pulling me into another warm hug. "It means everything that you're here. I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world," I replied honestly, my voice thick with emotion. "You were absolutely incredible up there. Truly incredible." He smiled, that same authentic smile I remembered from the garden that first day when he had asked me if he could ever feel alive again, and I had promised him he could. "I'm actually starting a non-profit organization," he told me, his eyes lighting up with passion and purpose, "to help people who are struggling with thoughts of ending their lives. I want to create peer support programs, bring music therapy into hospitals and treatment centers, fund crisis counseling, anything and everything that can help people find a reason to keep fighting, to keep leben." My heart swelled with immense pride. "That's absolutely amazing, Ethan, and I have absolutely no doubt that you'll help countless people through this work. You already have helped so many. You already are making a difference." As the evening came to a close and people began to leave, I stood outside the community center, watching them exit with smiles on their faces, many wiping away tears, all of them touched by what they had witnessed. Ethan's story had reached into their hearts, reminded them that recovery is truly possible, that there is always hope, even in the very darkest moments, that choosing life is always worth it, no matter how hard things get. If this story touched your heart in any way, know that you're not alone. We all carry our own battles, our own fears, our own doubts and struggles. But that's exactly why stories like this need to be told and heard. If you know someone who needs to hear this message of hope, please share this video with them. Sometimes a story can be the light someone desperately needs to not give up. And if you have your own story to tell, leave it here in the comments. This space is ours. It's safe, and every single word matters. I read all the comments, and I know many of you also read them and draw strength from each other's experiences. See you next Sunday, same time, with another story that will touch your heart. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of those you love, and remember, life is always worth living. A big hug, and see you next time. For anyone struggling with thoughts of ending their life, please reach out. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 988, available 24 hours every day. Crisis Text Line. Text HOME to 741,741. SAMHSA National Helpline, 1-800-662-4357. You are not alone. Help exists, and you deserve to live. You deserve to see what tomorrow brings.